few that didn't say. Yeah, you've all got it. Okay, that's good. Okay, so welcome to today's meeting, Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to remind everyone present that the meeting will be broadcast live via the County Council's website and also will be available for viewing after the meeting. Can everyone please switch off their, make sure the microphones are off when you finish with them, and you turn them off after you're on and off after you're speaking. Telephones off, please, so we don't have any interruptions. This is, we'll go to number one straight away, basically. This is a special extra meeting from the minutes of the last meeting of the 22nd of November. That will be cleared in January, so we're not going to manage the meeting from the last meeting because this is a special meeting, so we've got no concern with that. So moving on to our first agenda item, which is question time. I don't think we've got any questions. Moving on to item 2, questions asked by members under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. I have not received any. Item 3, urgent items. I have not been notified of any urgent items. Now to item 4, declarations of interest. Has any member of any interest they wish to declare? Paul.
Thank you, Chair. It's on agenda item 9. I am County Councillor for Market Harbour, Westland Foxton, so I don't think that's too difficult to assume into your policies. Okay. Thank you.
And I would, sorry.
Similarly, no, not at all, Alan. Similarly, item 9. Item 9, as I'm a dual hatter, a member of Harbour District Council, clearly there's a personal interest there, but no more than that. Thanks.
And of course, I'm a district and a Melton Borough councillor. There is some interest. I am not on the planning, so there is a personal interest, of course, living in Melton, and invariably taking 35 minutes sometimes to get 3 miles from my home to the office in Melton can be a bit frustrating. So we go straight on to item 5, declarations of party whip, accordance with overview and scrutiny, procedure 18. Any declarations, any member? No? Thank you. We now go on to item 6, presentation of petitions under Standing Order 36. I have received no petitions. Number 7, we now move on to number 7, Environmental Performance Report 2016 and 17, and Greenhouse Gas Report 2016, 2017, and I think we will go over straight away to Joanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you mentioned, the report is in 2 parts and covers the 16-17 financial year, and I'd just like to take you through and highlight some of the content in that report, if I may. The first part of the report details progress in delivering the County Council's environment strategy and carbon reduction strategy and the targets that are within it, whilst the second part of the report provides progress against the greenhouse gas emissions targets for the County Council, as well as outlining some of the costs that we've incurred. The front section of the report does set the historic policy context. I wasn't proposing to go through that in any detail, but it is in the report for members. If I then concentrate on the first report on environmental performance, it in essence goes through all the targets that are within those various strategies and outlines where those measures are either behind, ahead, or where there's been no change or no reporting. So if I just highlight some of the measures where we're behind target first, they're all referenced, but just picking a few of them out, there are examples. We are showing 1% increase in CO2 emissions from road transport, and I think that won't be lost on anyone here that's just reflecting higher traffic volumes. The target was very ambitious to simply sustain the levels at no growth, but acknowledge that there will be growth in traffic. Then there is a whole section which looks at both climate change and environmental risks. And overall, I think this is an incredibly positive position. When we first started reporting on these, if I pick, for example, environmental risks, where we have a score of over 15, we had over 200 risks as an authority. And in 15-16, we brought that down to 23, and now for 16-17, there are 10, of which 8 are within Environment and Transport as a department, which is heavily operational, so you might expect that. And they are listed under point 14 of the report, and acknowledge where those risks exist and the measures that officers are trying to put in place to mitigate them. There are other highlights around recycling performance, which we've covered in depth at this committee, where we're not achieving the target, and we have an ambition to address that and have a more realistic target when we review the environment strategy, amongst others. The report, in terms of being ahead of target, actually, sorry, no, I won't. I'll pick out the performance on SSSIs and wildlife sites. There is an acceptance that they're in decline, and there aren't specific measures referenced in the report to mitigate that, but there isn't the resource to address it. But again, as part of reviewing the environment strategy, I think officers will have to look at creative solutions around whether there's a different delivery model for that. So we do acknowledge that in the report. In terms of areas where we were ahead, then, we have very strong performance on CO2 emissions, which is covered in the second part of this report in detail. Renewable energy generation, we're actually exporting to the grid, so with the biomass boiler and other activities that we're doing, the solar panels on the roof, so a very good news story. Waste reduction through buildings, environmental complaints, all very positive. In terms of the second report, the greenhouse gas report for 16-17, we cover in Table A on page 13. It summarises that performance, but overall we're at over 37% reduction in emissions compared to the baseline year, and almost 21% below the previous year's reporting in 15-16. And in fact, for the first time, this means that we're actually surpassing the targets for 2020/21. That is all coming from initiatives such as the LED replacement project, which has been discussed here, buildings rationalisation, fleet modernisation, a number of good measures. And really, I'll finish then, Chair, if I may, just on the financial position linked to, we have to comply with something called the CRC regulations, where the County Council has to pay a fee for each tonne of carbon it emits. And the cost for 16-17 was just over £260,000, but that is over £60,000 less than the previous year, so financial benefits also being delivered. Thank you.
Okay, that sounds some good news. I think very, very impressive. And from a member, I'm very, very happy that you've also clarifying some of the bad news, which so we can focus on it. And I thought that was very good, and I really appreciate the report. We've got the first question, and we'll go over to Bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Joanne's covered most of the bits, but on page 7, item 14. The discharge from the transport depots. Can she explain to us what exactly is going to happen there to make it compliant, and also when will it be done by? That's the first one. And the second one is on page 8, the environment sites, acknowledging the fact that some have fallen into poor condition now. What are we going to do to get them back into reasonable condition? What action plan is going to be presented to actually get them back? Are we going to use volunteers, or what are we going to do to actually get them back in the site? Are we going to hand them over to the districts for them to do if they want to do it?
That's number 20, Bill. What you're talking about, item 20 on that? You said a
20,
page.
yes.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Then I'll come on to the greenhouse gas one after that for my chair.
Thank you.
Chair, if I may, I'm just going to hand over to James O'Brien, who is a team manager who works in part of my branch, who has some of the expanded detail to answer the questions raised.
Welcome, James. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Just on the first question around the transport depots, so there's 3 outstanding depots that have issues around the water discharge.
One of those is no work is planned because it's going to be closed soon. There's no point spending money on something that's going to be closed. The other two drainage audits have been done on the two sites, and one has shown that the drainage is actually connected to a foul sewer. So what needs to be done on that one is we need to apply to Severn Trent for a discharge licence. So that will be done soon. The other one, we have identified that the foul water does not go to a foul sewer, so engineering solutions are being considered at the moment. It would cost quite a lot to connect to the sewer, so we're looking at options like a self-contained car wash solution that gathers the water itself and then it takes it away. So we're looking at the costs involved and the amount of work that's going to be involved to address the situation. I do not have any timelines of that at the moment, but as I said, various engineering solutions are being considered to see what's most cost effective.
That part answers it, Chair, but I'm concerned that we haven't got a timeline of when we're going to have it completed by. And in view of we are causing this pollutant every day that we don't do something, I'd have thought time would be of the essence and we need to think about it. Perhaps Mr Payne could consider helping along that line a bit, if it's in his remit.
Well, can I just, no, not to Miss Payne, I think James is the officer first. I think let James answer that. I think he's, and then we can move on to either Mr Payne or Ian. But James, have you got some comment for that first?
Yeah, as I'm not directly responsible for the transport depots, I'm not familiar with the timescales or the work involved. I report on the performance rather than on the actual works, so I can talk to colleagues who are responsible for the actual works to find out more details on the timelines.
Okay, Anne, this is your department, so you would
yeah,
obviously...
absolutely. Sorry, just to echo what James has said, we can certainly come back with an update in terms of the detailed timings. As James is saying, we're looking at options, so we need to narrow down what's the most cost effective, what's the most effective overall in terms of outcome and pollutants, and then come up with the best option. And from that, we'll have a timescale, but we can certainly update you when we've got that information.
Blake, would you like to answer that?
Just to be absolutely clear, this actual report sits under the portfolio of environment which Councillor Posnett holds. So in terms of the outputs and the outcomes from an environmental perspective, Councillor Posnett isn't able to be with us today, but this certainly sits under her. In terms of the relationship between the infrastructure we're talking about, the passenger transportation depots, clearly that is something within the overall department, and I can assure all members that I do get briefed on capital budget proposals as to how to deal with improvements and maintenance across a plethora of different property sites that we have a relationship with as a department. So there are budget proposals being put in place to address these issues in this forthcoming year. Thanks.
Anne, could I could ask a question, because it is a fair question from Bill. Can we, at the next environment meeting, have maybe some idea of time for these projects, so we do have a sort of a schedule and how the work's going to be achieved and what we've done, and then we don't need to worry about polluting the area for a longer period.
We certainly can, or I can offer to circulate something to members prior to that.
That would be wonderful. Are you Councillor Bentley, I can't forget your first name.
The biomass boiler, I see that it's done its fair share to go towards the figures, but it was out of action for quite some time. What was the problem with this, and has it been fixed, and is it likely to go wrong again?
My understanding from property colleagues is that one of the augers snapped, and it took about 2 months or so, 3 months to get that fixed and the parts in. It may break again, but hopefully not. But yeah, so the performance would have been higher had the biomass not been out of commission for 2 or so months.
Dude?
Just a quick one on paragraph 9. This is something that is reported from the what's it called these days? The Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Department, and is therefore somewhat behind
It's 2 years behind. Are we going to get a report later on which will bring that up or more up to date than it is when we can discuss it in full?
Yes, as Councillor says, the information on the CO2 emissions from the local transport network comes from the government, and it's 2 years in arrears. So that is normally issued every July or so, July, August time. So we are dependent on when the government issues the information in order then to provide it to members.
Seems to be quite an important one for this committee particularly, but something that can perhaps wait until the next issue is made. Yeah.
Paul, you had a...
Chair, is it okay to go into Appendix A, the greenhouse gas emission? Or do you want to hold for a bit? Okay.
James.
So I realise I haven't answered the second question on the local wildlife sites. So regarding the local wildlife sites, we've recently met with colleagues to look at the issue and see how could we best address the issue. So colleagues in the ecology team are going to do an assessment of the 143 sites to kind of put them in priority order and to categorise them in terms of the nature of those sites. Once we have that information, we can better understand how can we address the issue, because it costs quite a lot of money to do the surveys, and that only tells you you've got a problem, not got a problem. It doesn't address the problem. So rather than waste loads of money on surveys, we're looking at how can we get the balance right between doing surveys on the ones that need the surveys, but also spending money on taking action to make them better. But until we've done that assessment and looked at the options, which we are looking at volunteers as an option, we are looking at maybe getting consultants in for the specialist work, because it's not something that can just be done by volunteers because of the complexity of the nature of the biodiversity that needs to be assessed and reported on. So we'll come back later with more information on our forward plan on that project.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to respond to that at all? It's interesting, I guess, when it comes down to surveys. They are expensive. I'm sure a lot of you use, like in housing, we use plan maintenance, knowing there's going to be a problem. We assume there's going to be a problem, so we don't do survey. We just go along saying there's a problem, sort it out. Works out a bit cheaper. So it may be worth looking at in the future. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the next section with it, which is the CO2. Okay.
Just if I may, a quick comment on what you just said. There are a lot of very enthusiastic volunteers in natural history and organisations like the National Trust, but I'll leave that with you. On page 19, 2 figures, one very illustrative of a decline in emissions, particularly under street lighting, which I guess is the LED rollout and the switch off, which is very encouraging to see in terms of emissions. It's because it shows the largest drop of any area there. But a comment, I don't quite understand the pie chart at the bottom. It's greenhouse gas emissions by source, and it's scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. What's a scope?
Through you, Chair, if you look at the previous page, page 18, I had the same thought when first reading the report. Well, because it's a standard template report issued arguably by the central government, you comply with it, but they define those 3 different types in scope 1 through 3 in the table on page 18.
I'm going to be really nitpicky. If you have an image, all the information should be able to be interpreted from the image. It shouldn't have to go page to page. I know it's only that previous page, but if you have all the information in one place, it's really helpful. I'm sure you could have got that squeezed in.
Sorry, through you, Chair. The report, I'm happy to pass it back to central government, but the actual template that our data goes into is issued by them. Our ability to manipulate what it looks like is limited in its extreme. And all I'd add is at Appendix 1, it does elaborate on the exactness of what Scope 1 through 3 is, certainly in terms of its text, but I accept your point that in terms of the legend on the graph itself, it's not expansive, but we can pass that back.
On such a small detail, the lack of clarity from government is worrying.
Joanne, could you get the address of the department and pass it on to Paul, and I'm sure he can write a letter on behalf of
Mr. Gove, I think, is the person.
Another question, Paul?
Yeah, it's just everything's good news here. Everything's declining, and on page 20 on the table, the actual is at a declining level, much greater than the target. So I think the council's doing a fantastic job with all its departments and partners in achieving that target. So well done.
Any other questions? Bill, I thought you had some on CO2. Am I right or wrong?
Well, just a tongue-in-cheek. If the Cabinet had agreed to spend the money sooner rather than it did, we'd have made even more savings by now, wouldn't we? But that was, the then Director of Finance did say the money was available, but Cabinet didn't choose to spend it on that mark. But I won't miss the opportunity of reminding people that was the case.
Fair enough, but better late than never, yeah?
Better late than never. But there we are. We are where we are.
Just quite interesting, while we brought this up, I think yesterday at the main meeting, there was a suggestion about turning the lights back on. Am I right? Did I hear that right? Or some comment? I just feel that part of having some of the lights off is helping reduce the carbon emission. It makes sense. So I think we need to look at that. I think if we have lights being turned on more regular, then we will see, I'm sure, a change in this graph. So I think we have to be aware of that. Look at this, for one action, there's a reaction. I just wanted to bring that to this group's notice.
Off the back of that point, I'm very grateful that you've raised that point, Chairman, because can I support that? Sorry. Can I support the point you've just made? I think this is a real success story for Leicestershire County Council. In actual fact, we have accelerated the LED lighting programme. The reason we've accelerated it is not because of the well-known fact that we need to save money, and this programme will save us in excess of £1 million ongoing each year. But we also need to understand that we've halved the CO2 emissions from our streetlights, and we've halved the kilowatt hours in the process, meeting our environmental obligations. So, I say every action has a reaction, and if we are to turn streetlights on, and there are some members that would like us to consider doing that, that obviously is going to have a negative impact on our climate change obligations, and clearly a negative impact on our resource position too. Thanks.
Thank you, Blake. Mr. Bolter. Mowbray Distributor Road, okay? Oh, thank you, Paul, very much to both of you. Thank you very much. This is that supplementary, or not supplementary, it's a separate document you've got here regarding Melton Mowbray. We've talked about it at length in Melton Mowbray. Of course, I live there. It's got a massive impact on the success of Melton economically, but I believe for the whole of Leicestershire. It's been quite well documented. There is a combination of funds coming in from 106, from the government, Leicestershire. We got the phone call, as you're aware, from the government to say go for it, which means there's every opportunity. As discussed in some of the briefings, I think it's the biggest road project Leicestershire has ever taken on. And I think that's quite exciting. So you've got your document, so we can discuss it. I'll go over to Anne now to clarify a few points, then we'll open for questions. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, you have the Cabinet report that's going to Cabinet next Tuesday in front of you on the Melton Mowbray Distributor Road. Therefore, there's an opportunity for any final comments that Scrutiny would like to feed through to that process. The report, as you'll see, seeks agreement to develop further the northern and eastern section of the road. And for your information then, the red section on the plan under paragraph 52 should make that clear for you what section we're talking about for this particular report. It also seeks approval for the necessary works to enable the planning applications to be developed and submitted next summer, and the further works leading us to a point of construction in 2020. Obviously, that is subject to securing that funding. They're also seeking approval for submission. The key thing here is the submission of the outline business case to DFT, Department for Transport, on 22nd of December. That, in effect, is our bid for funding. And I'll come on to funding in a moment. And further, the last thing it's seeking to is to report to Cabinet again prior to any submission of planning application next summer, to give an updated position on the actual project itself. To give you some of the background, I'm sure members will be aware that we have been developing a Melton Mowbray transport strategy for quite a while, and that's to support Melton's local plan, which overall is seeking to deliver 6,000 new houses and 51 acres of employment land by 2036, 4,000 of which are in Melton Mowbray itself. The strategy work that we developed up very quickly established that actually, small-scale measures weren't going to do it. We needed a significant increase in capacity. Therefore, either an inner or outer relief road was looked at, and the subsequent work established that the capacity required an outer relief road. That delivered maximum benefits to the town. The options that were tested are actually shown in the plan under paragraph 47, so you'll see there was fairly substantial work carried out. In July 2016, July last year, we were successful in getting a bid from DFT funding of up to 2.8 million to allow us to develop the business case, so to take that work forward, which again was a fair reflection on where DFT thought this project was, else they wouldn't have allocated that funding. But that required a submission of a business case, an outline business case, by this December. Now, just to make you aware, that is hugely compressed timescales than we would expect in order to deliver a business case for a project of this size. Therefore, when I come on to the funding, I will make the caveat, those figures may change as we get into more detail. But, that is the position we're in because DFT are requiring that. The scheme itself is, the proposal itself is a 4.3 mile single carriageway which links from the A606 in the northeast, that's Nottingham Road, to the A606 Burton Road in the southeast of Melton Mowbray. There has been a lot of debate, and I'm sure again members are probably aware of this, between the eastern route or the western route around Melton itself. Fundamentally, the evidence was showing us that whilst the busiest road into Melton is from Leicester, the A607, actually most of that traffic goes in and around the town itself. It's not through traffic. The most through traffic comes on the A606. Therefore, the maximum benefit is achieved if you go around the eastern side. In addition, the actual eastern route is shorter in length and requires less structures. Therefore, it's less expensive than the western route. When we then do all the business case work, what that shows is the eastern route actually has a far more robust business case. And we feel, and hopefully DFT, and we've been working closely with them as well, they feel that actually that is in the ballpark in terms of a robust business case, so hopefully we've got a good chance of that funding. The western route just did not stack up in order to get to the position where we felt we could tick DFT's boxes for funding. In terms of engagement and consultation, we carried out informal engagement over last summer, particularly with landowners, but we also carried out a formal engagement consultation process from beginning of last September to middle of October. The report covers responses, summary of responses to questions posed as that consultation under paragraphs 80 to 84. But fundamentally, what we found was there was no real showstoppers. We did have requests and conversations around refinements to the route, particularly the northern section through the development and also the crossing of the River Eye. And we've got particular challenges there under power lines over the river, etc. And it's more about refinements, what was coming out from the feedback from the consultation, rather than any particular showstopper issues. Funding, the cost estimate at this point in time for the scheme is 74 million. What we're seeking to bid for from government under that outline business case is 55 million. The remaining 19 million we would anticipate is funded through developer contributions, section 106, and actually we're in discussions with Melton Borough Council at the moment in order to come up with a financial agreement that will allow us, if section 106 isn't sufficient for whatever reason, that there's a number of other mechanisms that could be drawn on between ourselves and Melton Borough Council in order to make up the size of the gap, whatever that is at that time. We are hoping to be in a position to have that agreement in place by the time of Cabinet, or at the very latest by the time of the submission of the outline business case to Government before Christmas. Very finally, Chair, just the next steps, obviously Cabinet report, and subject to approval there, submission to DFT in December, 22nd of December. We will then be continuing to seek support for the case, so that DFT are actually very aware that there is a strong local momentum for this, and we'll continue to work with the land negotiations, the planning application, the detailed design, etc. There will be ongoing community engagement throughout this project. That's, a fundamental of delivering a project like this. And ultimately, subject to the funding being agreed by DFT, we would look to be on the ground sometime spring 2020 for construction. Thank you, Chair.
And the quite exciting thing that when originally that's been compounded from, I think, 5 years to 3 years. The initial, I know we're bringing it very, very tight. Is that correct?
The business case is something like 3 years to probably 1 year to do the work in.
Sounds exciting. Any questions, please? Bill?
Yes, just page 19, item 9. Meeting took place on the 4th of December between the Borough Council and the County Council. It's crucial that Melton Borough Council buy into the scheme, and according to what you said this morning, Chair, there's a meeting this evening. Will we be told the outcome of that meeting this evening before it goes to Cabinet, or will we not?
Yeah, as soon as we'll inform as soon as the meeting's complete. The leader will be in touch directly. There's full support. I think it's just
council meetings are council meetings, Chair. Nothing's a foregone conclusion.
In response, we've had no resistance in the sense from the council itself. We've had some excellent presentations and public meetings which were held. There is to be truthful, there's an action group, NMAG, which is very active. The officers came along to that and did a very good job. They could be very difficult. There's still the same old story. I want a road, but not next to me. Unfortunately, we've got lots of that. But it's been very well done, and I think we've been very clear and precise. To be honest, Bill, I don't see a problem. But like you say, in politics, you never know, do you? But
it's been agreed by Melton Borough Council. That's fine.
Well, I'll be doing that tonight. I'll be taking some information to the meeting tonight. There's not a problem. Thank you, Bill.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm making a guest appearance here this afternoon, so I've not been involved in the previous discussion. But I do welcome this road. I think it's something that's long overdue and is much needed. But the comment from Anne that it's a single carriageway, I mean, what does that mean? Obviously, I assume it means it's a single as opposed to a dual carriageway. But just how wide is it going to be? Is it the fact that we're spoiling the shit for a ha'porth of tar, I think the expression used to be?
Can I answer that a bit? Because I was at some of the meetings. It's similar to the bypass. If you go around Oakham, it's a single carriageway, but it's quite a wide one with, if I remember right, it's not the old-fashioned type of single. It's wide enough to take the heavy traffic, etc. A piece of work was done in regard to the trucks of, as you're aware, our problem is the amount of heavy-duty trucks going around or through Melton. And the argument would be, well, if it's going from Leicester all the way around to Nottingham Road, wouldn't they still think it's quicker to go through the shortcut, which sat-navs normally take you? But in fact, because of the speed, they've put up to 40 to 60 miles an hour. So it is a single carriageway that can take speeds of 60 miles an hour. And when it was timed, it's still quicker and save fuel, for the haulage companies to go round the long way, it'll be quicker and cheaper. So it is a road that can cope with larger lorries, etc. Anne.
Absolutely correct. Can I just add to that, if I may, Chair? The road will be 7.3 metres wide, which is fairly standard width for a distributor road. And actually, you know, it is in the name, it's Melton Mowbray Distributor Road. It is designed to distribute traffic around urban areas. But fundamentally, it is about a balance. It will be going through housing areas as well, so we have to have that balance. But actually, it does have the capacity for the traffic that's forecast to be on it, and that is a fairly standard construction. Absolutely right in terms of the speeds. Through the northern section, we're anticipating it being 40 miles an hour, and that eastern side, down the eastern side of the town, it'd be 60 miles an hour.
Anybody? I saw Paul. You've had a question. Oh, thank you. The questions.
Sorry, Tom. Well, just to repeat what's already been said, I think this is long overdue. My only comment is, obviously, I would like to have seen a ring road, and this is a C road. It'd be nice if this is designed in such a way that if the money became available in the future, that it could actually be a complete ring. Because the way I see it is that depending on where you're coming off, and if you want to go to the other side, you're probably going to get an awful lot of traffic. I don't know which. It looks like Nottingham Road. You're going to have a lot of traffic cutting through there rather than completing the ring. So, however this is designed, it'd be nice if the design factors in that possibility for the future.
Again, Ian, I can answer that a bit, being involved. The original concept was to have the road that side. Unfortunately, the economic cost of the road, because it's a lot more expensive, economically it wasn't viable compared to the east. Secondly, if you know Melton, I'm sure you do. That area is floodplain, and it's very difficult. It floods now. There's still a whole area because I live in that side, and we do get a lot of flood. There's if you know the River Eye, it meanders around, it splits, and you've got the whole Trent. There's a Trent waterway thing there that filters. It would be very difficult to build that side and not economic. What all the work I've seen and having that C road will really work well for us at the moment, and I think the future's the future, isn't it? But point taken, Ian. Thank you. Over to you, Anne.
Thank you very much. All I would add to that is just to clarify that the funding bid that's going into DFT is for the northern and the eastern section. The southern section that makes up that C, we're expecting developers to bring that one forward. And, you know, exactly as the Chair has said, there is a moment in time, this moment in time, and that's what's required for Melton. However, we all know life changes, so, you know, come the future, who knows what's needed, but, you know, one could anticipate that actually that whole thing may well happen at some point in the future.
Go for it, Ian.
Well, that is good news, but of course I know how difficult it can be building on floodplains roads. I live just off the A6 between Bristol and Rothley. And all of that land from Rothley down to Loughborough is all floodplain. So that road was put in mercifully as a Rothley Mount Sorrel bypass about 25 years ago, and that's been absolutely terrific. Okay, thank you.
I think add to it, though, that we are relying somewhat, Ian, on 106. The developers don't want to know, mate. They're looking at going, and we've got a local plan, and that area, if you look at the local plan, more of the southern side of Melton, that's where a bulk of the building's going. So we've got to go with the developers a little bit to get the 106, and that's the deal. Bill.
Will it contain a cycle lane on this highway? Will there be a footpath, or is that... This is footpath and cycleway, yeah.
Yes, because that's part of the strategic plan. Well said, Bill, yes. Mr. Hunt or
I think
Max?
Mr. Hunt will do nicely, thank you. Actually, Bill's just must have read my notes or something. I was going to ask the same question, but more widely, the focus is very much on the road, and there's been a big discussion about east or west, and that seems to be resolved and fully justified by the professional staff that we employ. It's the knock-on effects of the road, in the sense that there's clearly going to be further traffic on the Welby Lane. That's the one that goes from Asfordby to the part of the northern section, and all the other intersections, of which there are several, need to be designed, and I'm sure they will be, not just to accommodate the traffic, but to minimise road traffic risk, and particularly for walking and cycling. So that's a general question. How far at the moment have we considered all the surrounding effects of the new road, and when will that be addressed in plans?
Can I, again, sorry, because I live and breathe it. Max, yeah, that has been the consideration is that is not necessarily the relief road. What will impact on the Dalby Road and the roads leading into Melton will be the developments. That if you think about it, it's the developments that's going to increase. So we are doing a lot of work on that. Of course, we work locally with the developers to improve the roads. And that's part of the strategic plan for the internal side of Melton that we're working on. At the moment, we need to focus, because we have a very, very, well, we're aware totally that the amount of traffic, there will be a massive relief, and we believe we will manage to cope, the roads there will cope more adequately when we've got that relief. Over to you, and I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but I hope I've got it right.
If I can just add to, obviously, yeah, thank you. Our modelling work, you're absolutely right in the point that there will always be other impacts, but the modelling work does have a fairly wide scope. It doesn't just look at a very tight network. We actually go out wider than that. And what the modelling actually has shown is, without that northern and eastern section, the section we're talking about now being constructed, traffic, actually more and more traffic is put onto that Welby Road, and there's other ones like that in the network as well. So actually it will improve. By building this, we will help improve that situation. We'll not obviously take that away. That will, local people know, etc., have a view of the network and where they want to go on it. However, the modelling is showing that that does have an impact and improve the situation there. I think the other thing I would say is, at the very outset, I said this is one part of the wider transport strategy for Melton. And as the Chair has quite rightly stated, that then looks to deal with the other impacts. It looks to deal with specific junction capacity issues in the centre, walking and cycling issues, as well as other implications such as running on the network.
Add to that as well, Max, is that we, as you're aware, in all areas, we get rat runs, and you get that, and particularly where we're putting the relief road, actually will have a massive impact on negating the rat run, because there's a rat run there from Norfolk Road down Kirby Avenue, Kirby through, and there's lots of cars shoot in and out, and I just think this will have a really positive impact on stopping the rat runs and actually making those areas a lot more safer.
There used to be a saying that if you create a new road, you create two new traffic jams at either end. But it's the knock-on effects, isn't it? And I'm grateful for the optimism which you're exuding about the project.
The next item. Okay.
It's not a question. I just want to, having heard the brief debate we've just had, in relation to notification of Melton Borough Council's decision at their meeting tonight, members will appreciate we have a Cabinet meeting next Tuesday, the 12th, and I can assure you all of these decisions are dependent on outcomes at the meetings, and they'll be fed through to that Cabinet meeting, as will the comments of this panel too. I just want to say that it is a huge project. It is clearly taken a lot of time, resource and expertise of the department to try and see this through. We're not home and dry yet. It is subject to government funding largely, although we have put a great deal amount of funding. But again, I probably over-egg this, but I don't think we can underappreciate the work and the quality of the officers that we've got in the department. Last week I went on a tour of all the growth sites and we actually visited Melton, but it was unfortunate that some of the key senior officers within the department were able to join us because they were busy trying to put this bid together, working morning, afternoon, evening, trying to get this into a format to be submitted not only to our cabinet meeting but obviously to the DFT. So we owe the department a great deal of thanks for the work they're putting into this at the moment, and I'm hugely excited about the proposal of delivering this road in 2020 should we be given the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
And can I assure, once again, from everybody here, from the Leicestershire County Council, the Melton Borough Council, and the people of Melton really appreciate your support. They've been informed. It's very exciting that we're working together on this, and along this, there's nothing more than positive comments on the relationship in this project with Melton and the Leicestershire County Council. Ian.
Yes, Chair. It's been overdue for a very long time.
Thanks, Ian, mate. We'll try and get you one of the first cars on it, mate. Okay? Okay, can we go on to the next agenda item, which is number 9, Market Harbour Transport. Over to Ian. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report you have before you is the Cabinet report, and we're seeking members of Environment and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee's comments to submit with the Cabinet report on the outcomes of the engagement and consultation exercise and revisions made and additional work resulting from the Market Harbour Transport Strategy as in Appendix D, page 323 on the report. The strategy will help support the current planned growth in Market Harbour itself and place this council in a strong position to secure public and private funding for the transport improvements necessary to support this growth. The town has had significant growth planned with over 2,700 new dwellings before 2031, in addition to over 900 being built in the last 6 years. In September 2016, Cabinet agreed on for us to consult on the key emerging findings and recommendations from the transport study we'd undertaken in conjunction with Harbour District Council. And as members may be aware, similar exercises have been undertaken in other county councils recently, such as Hinckley, which has provided a strong evidence base from which we've been able to secure government and other funding to deliver some of those improvements. The recommendations of the study, which we went to consultation on, included improvements to encourage a full suite of measures, including walking and cycling, junction improvements to tackle congestion, and possible traffic management measures, including a southern bypass linking Northampton Road with Harbour Road, and increasing the height of the Rockingham Road rail bridge, which causes conjunction as well as an issue that's known to many residents of Harbour around the use of the Welland Park Road. Consultation took place in January to March in 2017, earlier in the year, with public exhibitions attended by over 600 people, as well as with key stakeholders, representative organisations. Officers put a lot of time into talking to the town, its representatives and other people, and I've got to say, on the whole, it was very, very positively received again. We had a lot of good comments back, which enabled us to revisit the strategy and refine it. Some of those changes appear as in Appendix B, page 31, starting at paragraph 29, where locals were able to identify other key issues, and we were either able to comment on those, include them in the strategy, or discount them and for the reasons why. The key findings were basically nearly 3/4 of those who replied agreed that we'd identified the main transport issues. The majority of those who didn't reply to that question, so we pretty much got the issues right to start with. It was about the solutions that a lot of people wanted to talk to us about. Additional concerns raised were regarding air quality, rat running on other local roads, inclusion of a park and ride for Harbour, and the Kettering Road rail bridge as well. The strategy has now been amended as a result of the consultation feedback onto 4 board themes. Once again, covering walking, cycling, improving key junctions, public realm enhancements, and changes to the way the traffic is routed through the town. At present, no further County Council funding has been identified for the key delivery of any of these measures, and any funding will need to be secured from public or private sources. We have already secured, though, £2 million from developer contributions from those planning permissions coming forward, and we will continue now with this very strong evidence base to secure further funding. Of course, any measures that are brought forward will be subject to full consultation proposals. And to conclude, this strategy, if adopted by Cabinet, will be a key supporting document for Harbour District Council's new local merging plan, which is being developed as we speak. Thank you, Chair. Any questions?
First of all, Ian, before we go to questions, I just think it's an excellent report. They've done a lot of work in this. Very impressive. And just like to congratulate all of you on a well-done report. A lot of consultation, done in depth. I'm sure the people of Market Harbour are quite pleased that you've gone to such depth and covered so many issues. Okay, can we have questions, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, and it links, well, two questions linked. The upgrade of Welland Park Road is one of the key capacity changes, I think, that is being proposed on page 89, and the downgrading of Coventry Road. Now, the linking here is the HGV vehicle traffic. Last night, the A14 was shut. So I've already had correspondence with people on Coventry Road, and the other point that they're making is the rerouting of heavy goods vehicles away from the centre of Market Harbour. And that is within your documents on page 285 about send an updated map to SatNav contacts advising of HGV controls following on from recommendation R16, which is above. But that recommendation doesn't include Welland Park or Coventry Road. So what I'm asking is, what is the impact of changing the upgrade of Welland Park Road and downgrading Coventry Road on HGV traffic? Yes, but is it negative for Welland? That's what I'm
As you rightly assumed, we can only divert traffic from one route to another. I think I'll take it back when you said about the A14 to start with. We are currently in discussions with Highways England at the moment on their emergency planning routes for this area. If there were any proposed changes, we would bring those forward. However, every road in the area, when a major road shuts, has to take its brunt of the traffic. Unfortunately, that's an issue for most people who live anywhere near a large road. The debate over Coventry Road and Welland Park Road has been ongoing for many years in Harbour, pretty much since the early 90s when the A6 bypass was built and the town was reconfigured at that time. As I say, we can only make traffic use one route or another or split them between. A lot of the through routing traffic that then has to travel along Coventry Road and go through the centre of the town is felt to have been better suited if it uses Welland Park Road. However, Welland Park Road also has its challenges. One, it has the entrance to the school on, and it currently has traffic calming. So the decision to take that forward, we feel it will have benefit for the routing through traffic. Obviously, it has disbenefits for the residents. That would have to go through a consultation process and full approval, and other measures would have to be brought in to make that happen regarding signal movements. Thank you.
I think,
yes, Paul,
as the Chair said, this is a documentation which gives the District Council a roadmap of improvement when the funding comes forward from the developments that are either being built out now or planned. And going on the basis of the previous paper, this is at a much earlier gestation than the Melton Mowbray Relief Road that we heard in the previous paper. But going forward, this is the detail which will be further consulted on when it comes more to making final plan, so that the public will have further input into what the plan would finally be when it actually is implemented, when the money's there. And I think that's the point. It's the point in the cycle of this, and it's at the right point for Market Harbour, because Market Harbour, as you described, has got a lot of development, so that the impact of that is finance for such a plan. And it's down to the District Council to make that negotiation with the developer. Thank you.
Ian?
Chair, yes. I would say The interesting thing about having the two, Melton Distributor Road and the Market Harbour strategy coming together, the Market Harbour strategy deals with the planned growth that's been planned for some time. The Melton Distributor Road is around future plans and putting together their local plan. The interesting thing is the Melton strategy will probably start looking something like this as we develop that over the next year as well. We will then be in a position to also secure from developers in Melton and Harbour. But yeah, this is a nice menu of measures that we all have to try and secure the funding for.
The good news, Ian, you've got a bit of a blueprint that we can, similar size towns, similar sort of situation. There's a blueprint, isn't there?
I'd just say, man, the bad news is I also have to deliver the Melton Distributor Road as well.
Yeah. Okay, David.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting references in here, page 264, to rail bridges, which is repeated further into the report. The Rockingham Road Bridge and the Kettering Road Bridge, and the hope is expressed here that either Network Rail or some other agency will be paying for the increased clearance. Now this is, you know what I'm going to ask, don't you? Because we obviously have the same problems in Hinckley, where Network Rail are not in a position to pay for the clearance improvements, height or width, both of which are required in our area. So at some point, could you drop me a note to let me know how you are going to be able to persuade whoever it is to pay for improvements in Market Harbour when we can't have the same improvements in Hinckley, despite possibly 20 years of asking.
Ian?
Yes. Obviously, these were issues that were identified in Market Harbour the same the way they have been in Hinckley, and I would say they've been identified in Market Harbour for many years as well. The aspiration to improve the situation is one we always have. We will continue to ask whenever Network Rail or someone else is doing works in the area to see if that can be done. Track improvements is usually one of those places we can. As all I can say is we will continue to ask. I am not hopeful that we will get money, but that doesn't mean we don't keep asking.
The thing is, you've got to keep with aspirations. I'm sure we all believe in that. Never give in and have a dream. And if we get 3/4 of the way or halfway, we've done something. Blake, over to you.
Is that concluded the debate from your panel on this? I did. Sorry, I'll come in at the end if it suits you, Chairman.
Okay, all right, you can finish off. Any other questions on this? Well, then over to you, Blake.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, it's a little bit indulgent, I suppose. When this first started to come about, I was a leader of another authority, but I was also the County Councillor for Harbour West and Foxton, which Dr Bremner is currently the elected member for. So, in a way, we both have an interest in this particular report. So I'm pleased that we've now finally got it into a format and a stage where it's now ready to be adopted by the Leicestershire County Council Cabinet. There's some really positive measures in here. One of the reasons this came about was members will appreciate there was a permittance of a strategic development area to the northwest of Market Harbour town some years ago, and there was a great deal of concern amongst members of the public and certain members of the district authority at that point in time that the highways impacts of that development hadn't been properly considered, and indeed there wasn't a proper strategy or a formal piece of evidence here at the Leicestershire County Council that identified, the necessary improvements strategically for the whole town area. I think we've overcome that now, and what we can firmly say is we have a strategy, we have a document that's identified the challenges the town faces, but also promotes the solutions and the improvements that can be made to mitigate against the general growth and demand on the highways network around Market Harbour town, which is of benefit to Leicestershire because it's a key economic hub. Our 11 market towns create more GVA than the whole of Leicester City put together. Let's not forget that. And obviously it's in all of our interest to make sure that the people who live in our market towns and the particular areas of Leicestershire have the best facilities possible. So this is extremely welcome, in my opinion. The only caveat I would say, and I think it's already been identified, we haven't identified any Leicestershire County Council money to fund these measures and proposals in this document. However, we have accrued some Section 106 and developer contributions that allow us to consider some of the smaller schemes. So the wider schemes and the larger projects that have been identified will be dependent on government grants and will be further dependent on developer contributions moving forward. So in that respect, it is incumbent on the planning authority, which in this case is Market Harbour District or Harbour District Council, to make sure when they permit planning applications that the requisite amount of Section 106 contributions are levied so we can realise the proposals before us. And I commend it. Thank you.
I think importantly, you're ready to write the touch paper whenever you need to do. I think that's, and it's nothing worse when somebody gives you money and you're not ready, and then you can't do it because you haven't got the resources. You've done the work, and I think it's exciting. Paul?
Just one final comment, which is a comment about the HGV. Could the department inform me how residents are informed of future work on the A14 so that they're properly notified of possible HGV traffic that travels through Market Harbour? Because residents last night didn't have any information from local media that they were aware of about closure. That'd be great.
Can I answer that? I don't know what the rules are. It's very difficult because basically you can have an accident, Paul. I mean, we constantly get it through Melton Mowbray where we get HGVs coming through the whole centre. So I know it could be anything. Yeah, it could be roadworks, could be an accident as well, though.
Chairman, if you will just indulge me on that very point. I'm familiar with the issues that Dr. Bremner are facing because they once came into my inbox, and I did a great deal of work with the previous director to make sure that as best we could as a highest department, we played our part in making sure there was mitigation and decent notification. But I'm sure the department will respond to Dr. Bremner on the point he's requested at this meeting. Just on a further point, as lead member for the department, Ian Veers mentioned earlier on that we're in discussion with Highways England because sometimes we forget that the major routes around the county are the responsibility of another entity, Highways England in this case, and where we are aware in all of our towns within Leicestershire that any diversion will have a greater impact than necessary, we will resist the measures that they're proposing. So we are conscious when we are consulted about the impact on the road networks of Leicestershire, and we'll try and minimise that as best we can for Leicestershire's benefit.
We'll be there in a minute, and just similar, I think, is with Trent Water or the water. That if something happens, they can close the road with limited notification. Am I correct? Because we've had that in Melton. Nobody knew, something went, and then we've had.
Just a couple of points to make. You're absolutely right. If it's emergency works, it can happen, immediately, and therefore notification is extremely difficult. We're in a reactive position, and that applies to the A14, which is the Highways England road. Where it is planned works, obviously far easier to go through the notification channels. Whereas the emergency works, which I'm not sure about the incident yesterday, whether that was, I'm assuming it is. Actually, that's far more challenging in order to get and we do rely on the likes of, or Highways England will rely on the likes of local media. And for whatever reason, if they're not picking it up, it's very difficult. Residents just know the immediate impact.
Thank you. Well, I think there's no more questions. So we'll go on to section 10 to remind everybody that the next meeting of this committee is scheduled to take place the 18th of January 2018. So to this committee, that's 2 p.m. I wish you a very Merry Christmas. I don't think there's any more urgent items. Have a safe journey home, and where there's not very safe air quality, hold your breath. Okay, so. Well, no, they didn't give us a sherry. So, meeting closed. Thank you very much for your contribution. God bless.